Classic game collections are a popular trait that would start to see life on majority of consoles, especially during the 90s period, with the likes of the Sega Saturn, even the Dreamcast, and even on other consoles with the Sony PlayStation and the like, that would allow fans to get a glimpse of the very early renditions of game ideas that set the stage for everything that was to come after it. So here we are going to be looking at another list of classic entries under the Sega Memorial Collection, which would be Volume 2, that would expand upon the previous entry with more games to try. So if you're a fan of old school games, this might be another list worth checking out, which we will dive into here. Samurai is a 2D arcade fighting game, with the main character being a samurai warrior where you are pitted in an arena style environment to face off against several different opponents, where you have other samurais trying to defeat you, while you also have ninjas throwing various items like knives and shurikens at you in order to try and defeat you. Once you've defeated all of the opponents on screen, you will then have a boss encounter towards the end of each level, but this is where the game can get quite tricky, as the boss has more movesets at his disposal, so you have to have an air of strategy about you in order to have any chance of winning. The boss will only ever appear once all of the enemies have been defeated on screen. This game is very challenging, however. It is very one tough game to play, and it won't be for everybody. Monaco Grand Prix started off life originally in the arcade in 1979 and would later be ported to the Sega SG-1000 in 83 and would be a top-down vertically scrolling racing game where the goal is simply just to keep racing and overtaking as many cars as possible on the track at high speeds while avoiding obstacles, other racers, and to stop yourself essentially from crashing. The speed of the game can be very quick, so if you're not aware of your surroundings and if you don't have good reaction times, it will be game over very quickly. This game would also add is the inspiration for a lot of other future racers to take full advantage of different systems later on, and Super Monaco GP itself would also see somewhat of a re-envisioning on later systems with enhanced graphics and even 3D visuals that would also become part of more Sega Ages classic catalogue collections that would even appear on the PlayStation 2. Starjacker would release in the arcade and Sega SG-1000 in 1983 and would be a vertical scrolling shoot 'em up that controls a universe squadron of jets with the job to attack and eliminate various enemy colonies while evading and destroying other enemy UFO forces. One of the major differences with this game compared to other shooters of a similar style is that you can control multiple ships at once. The game also has a 2-player mode that you can play with your friends. So once you acquire new lives, you will gain access to an additional ship that will appear behind you, that will stack up, and you'll be able to do more damage as all ships will be shooting all of their weapons all at the same time, which you can defeat enemies a lot faster. The only downside to this is that even if you avoid enemies with your first ship, if another ship in the path or the line gets hit from behind, you will lose a life anyway. So it leaves you open to attack a lot more. What's interesting about this game is the gameplay style and even the visuals for an early title. They're quite detailed with a lot going on, but the fact is that you can play with your friends adds to the appeal. Now it is a challenging game and there's times when you will die in certain instances a lot. Like I can imagine back in the day when you had the limited lives, like say 3 to 5 lives, it wouldn't last you very long in this game because it is a very, very challenging experience. But with this version or re-envisioning of the game on this collection, like with many other games in this list, it gives you the access or the ability in order to change certain play dynamics and even have infinite lives. So you can just keep playing for as long as you want. But that's not to say that it will make the game any easier because you'll still die a lot as a result. But you just won't be brought to the game over screen like you would with most games. You can just keep playing until you pretty much get to the end, or in most cases with the majority of these games is that they're really never ending. They just keep going until you have lost all of your lives or you've gained the highest amount of score possible. But still, it's an interesting concept and it's worth a try if you're a fan of these old school vertical shoot 'em ups. Sinbad Mystery would release for the Sega SG-1000 and arcade in 1983. That is a top-down action-adventure game where you play as Sinbad the sailor, and your goal is to traverse each of the maps and collect all of the items to piece together treasure maps so that you can find treasure chests that will appear upon completion of all of the objectives. And you can manipulate certain elements by using blocks or boulders or digging holes in order to stop monsters from getting near you. And the game would have a similar gameplay element to that seen in the likes of Pac-Man or even later with Bomberman on other systems, where you can manipulate different aspects in order to achieve the necessary outcomes. Now it is a tricky game because you can get yourself caught or blocked into a corner and an enemy will catch you if you're not careful. But what's interesting about this early rendition of these type of games is the fact is that you can play on multiple planes, both on the ground perspective and even up above on another level, where you'll have to use stairs in order to get to the higher levels to find the items necessary in order to unlock the chest that will appear. Plus you also have the ability to play with your friends in a 2-player mode, which will add more fun to the experience. An interesting but tricky game, but it's definitely worth trying. Penguin Land, originally released on the Sega Master System in 1987, and the goal here is to tunnel your way through the ice in each level, while also trying to make sure that you take the egg that you have and try to proceed to the safety of the exit. But you have to contend with multiple different challenges because you can't let the egg drop too far or it'll break, and you also have to deal with polar bears or enemies that will get in your way. So what you'll actually have to do is you'll have to use your environment to drop blocks down on the enemies to crush them so that you can proceed, because if you fall too far or if the egg falls too far, it's pretty much game over. So you have to be mindful of your surroundings, as every choice that you make can be detrimental to your future success. So essentially it is a puzzle game where the choices define the outcomes. It's very tricky to master and it's not an easy game to play, but does have some interesting quirks and gameplay dynamics that will definitely get you thinking about what to do next. But it was considered to be quite popular, as this game, along with many other games in this series, would also see their way onto other collections on modern systems even to the current day. Ninja Princess would be an action-adventure shooter game, releasing originally in 1985 in the arcade, with later ports to the Sega Mark III and SG-1000, where you play as a female ninja as you fight through waves and hordes of enemies across different levels to recapture territories, to reclaim the castle and the land that is occupied by enemy forces. So you will have knives and shurikens as your weapons. The shurikens will come through picking up scrolls along your way, which will give you some additional power to defeat enemies a lot quicker. But as in with a lot of these games, once you get hit by any sort of object or come in contact with an enemy, it will equal instant death. And some of the console ports would contain less levels than what was in the original. One thing that's notable about this game is the detail of the graphics. They're very bright, colourful, vibrant, with a lot of detail, and especially for an early 8-bit game, is quite a sight to behold. But if we look at it more clearly, this game would also be the catalyst for a re-envisioning that would later release on the Master System in 1986 under the Ninja, which essentially is the same game, with the levels being almost identical, but just with some graphical changes and gameplay control dynamics being changed around, where your goal is to save the princess and the land, which has a similar story and outlay, but you play as a male character instead of a female character. But essentially the game is almost identical in many ways, although graphically, while it's good, just wouldn't have the final touches or finesse that this game has, considering this game came out a lot earlier. But between the two titles, while I personally owned the Ninja on the Master System growing up, and I thought it was one of the toughest games that I played for the time, and I enjoyed it, managed to finish it, but having played this game, while I thought it was very cool, this game is ridiculously tough. It gets to a point at certain levels among certain boss fights, because there's certain areas where enemies just constantly spawn and you're trying to deal with them alongside of fighting with the boss as well, and it gets so tricky that more often than not you'll end up dying and may not be able to get past the level at all. This game is even more difficult than the later alternative, but the one advantage with the games being added on this collection is that you do have options to make certain tweaks to add in more lives, even have infinite lives, so you can keep replaying until you get past all of the tricky parts. Now, if you're patient, it is doable, but for the less patient people, it probably may not be a game suited to you. But each to their own, I suppose. But it's still worth a try. Whichever alternative that you play, whether it be this or the Ninja on the Master System, they're both challenging but yet solid games to try. This interesting list here presents a different mix of varying gameplay experiences, from racing to shooting, action adventure, even puzzle, that will present many different aspects to suit different player dynamics and would have appealed to different players of the time. While they are challenging, they're not without their flaws or appeal at the same time, and would have been very tough experiences to try back in the day, but at least with this type of classic collection, even with the first volume which I have covered in a previous video, they offer up some different and interesting ideas, even options that will make them more approachable and playable at the same time to more modern players that want to get in on the action, to revisit these classics to see what they're all about, as there really is something here for everyone. And with that being said, there is a lot more to discover with the majority of these collections that were re-released by Sega over the years, even up to modern systems in the current day, which we need to learn more about, which this next video will provide.